what's happening inside your body when your body gets cold is the fluid contained inside your cells. Hey, listeners, we're going to get really sciencey, but thanks to my former podcast guest, Dude Spellings, and his brilliant interpretations of the research published by Dr. Jack Kruse on cold thermogenesis, we're going to try to get it down to somewhat understandable, these mind-blowing insights about how you can reverse the aging process at the quantum physical level in your mitochondria, in your cells. You can reverse the aging process through therapeutic cold exposure. And by doing so, you're doing so by enhancing mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the energy producing power plants located inside most of our cells. It's become an emerging topic in the progressive health circles. There's entire books written about how to improve your mitochondrial health, and many scientists and medical experts agree that mitochondrial health represents the root of all health, energy, vitality, and longevity, and mitochondrial dysfunction represents the root cause of all disease. It comes down to your body's ability to produce energy. And if you suck at producing cellular energy, you are on your way to accelerated aging, demise, disease, and death. And if you are a highly energetic human who can perform, you've also heard all the science recently about one's VO2 max value. That's a measure of exercise capacity, oxygen intake capacity during intense exercise. This is also highly correlated with longevity. And of course, getting that mitochondria to make ATP efficiently is what makes you an active, energetic being. So how does cold exposure come in here? And if you haven't heard of Jack Kruse, he's way out there on the cutting edge and possibly a controversial guy in some circles because his stuff is so far out there. But he's a brilliant neurosurgeon, noted biohacker, longevity expert. He has some wonderful blog articles, and I have done a complete recording prior about his article on his website called Cold Thermogenesis 7, and he takes us around the 24-hour human biological clock, noting the hormonal processes that are happening in the body on a circadian clock. So you'll learn in that episode the best time to have sex, the best time to work out, the best time to eat, and particularly how amazingly important the hours of 12 midnight to 3 a.m. are for your hormonal function, repair, and restoration, and how sensitive your body is, where it requires complete darkness, and hopefully you're asleep that whole time, because that's when growth hormone and other adaptive hormones come out to play, and they're very, very light sensitive, and they're very sensitive to disruptions in healthy sleeping habits. So Kruse is definitely one of the cutting edge proponents of cold exposure. I remember talking to him, 10 years ago, where he was reporting that he had made it for an hour in an ice bath in his bathtub at home. And I was like, wait, are you kidding? So the water near freezing, he has gone out to the very, very cutting edge of what the human can handle and the effect on the human of extreme cold exposure. But that's not what we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about establishing a regular practice of therapeutic cold exposure to improve mitochondrial health. And if you're not familiar with the topic, probably you've consumed some content because it's so popular these days. You can find my comprehensive online course. I believe it's the most comprehensive online multimedia course on getting started with a cold therapy practice that you can find on bradkearns.com. It's called Take the Cold Plunge, and it'll have everything you need to get up to speed on this interesting practice, but one that's been widely misinterpreted and misappropriated. It seems like it's turned into a macho contest. I love the parody videos on Instagram where people are joking about, putting cold exposure and bragging to the world about how tough they are. So really what we want to focus on is therapeutic exposure to cold water to help with things like fat burning and mitochondrial function in the case of the focus of this message. So You realize that exposure to cold increases the activation of brown fat as well as regular white body fat. And what's happening inside your body when your body gets cold is the fluid contained inside your cells heats up. That's because mitochondria are working in overdrive to produce ATP. That's the energy source for cellular respiration, the energy currency of the body. We're working hard and the mitochondria is heating up because we're cold. We're trying to keep our body warm. The body reacts when we plunge into cold water. Here's an insight that we also are familiar with. When water heats up, its volume shrinks. It's one of the few materials on Earth where this is true. And when water is cooled, its volume expands. How do you already know that? Put a plastic water bottle in the freezer and see what happens. It busts out of the confines of the bottle. So this is an important insight to remember as we go through the story, but you already know this. So interestingly, cold water expands when it's cold and shrinks when it heats up. Now, with smaller intracellular water molecules, this means when you're in cold water, the respiratory proteins inside your mitochondria, they're called cytochromes, can move closer together. This makes the mitochondria and the cytochromes vastly more efficient at doing their vitally important job of fueling ATP. When your cytochromes move closer together, they can shuttle electrons more quickly through the electron transport chain. This enables you to make more ATP more quickly throughout the body. For every angstrom, that's a scientific term meaning 100 millionth of a centimeter, for every angstrom that cytochromes move closer together, you achieve a 10-fold improvement in ATP production. So if you're completely oblivious to the scientific terms, it doesn't matter. What we're saying is when you engage in therapeutic cold exposure, your mitochondria become better at making energy inside the body by a vastly exponential 10-fold improvement in ATP production. Now, why is it good to make energy more efficiently? Forget about cold exposure for a moment. Think about someone who runs warm with warm body temperature. They're comfortable in cold temperatures outside, even with less clothing. They're fast moving. They move quickly. They think quickly. Their leg is fidgety when they're sitting at a table. These are highly energetic human beings, which is by and large an indicator of robust health and longevity potential. There's even been research showing that one's walking speed is directly correlated with longevity. The faster you walk, the greater longevity potential you have outside of your fitness and getting out of breath. And they also have research about fidgeters, and fidgeters have a tendency to maintain better body composition, better metabolic function, just because they're producing energy at rest. In contrast, we see very clearly with a lot of disease patterns, especially associated with thyroid dysfunction, people who run cold, who have a tendency to easily get cold hands and cold feet. They're very sensitive to outside temperatures and need to dress warmly. They can't handle even the slightest disturbance by going out in cold weather for a few minutes. They have a tendency to move slowly or a tendency to remain at rest. The object at rest remains at rest. So you could use the word lazy because once they're ensconced in the couch to watch evening entertainment, they're kind of have a hard time getting up and answering the door to get their DoorDash. Just teasing a little bit, but we know the problems associated with that sluggish metabolism and those running cold symptoms. If you have spent time around a senior citizen, you will realize that they are very temperature sensitive. And if you go into the nursing home, you'll see them dressed up in sweaters and coats, even in a normal room temperature environment, because they are so sensitive to cold. I remember spending time with my father in his final months and days at the age of 97. So he had a good, beautiful run, but he was always wearing his robe and a sweater underneath that. and was very sensitive to cold. And we'd have the heat dish working in his room so that he would feel more comfortable because he was not as efficient at producing his own body heat and making energy in the ATP. It's just a normal consequence of aging and ultimately being on your deathbed, right? Okay, so these are like kind of undisputed insights. In contrast, someone running hot, as we talked about earlier, is likely indicating optimal ATP energy storage, and the extra energy, because they already have optimal energy storage, the extra energy is used to generate heat through the uncoupling of mitochondria. And the uncoupling of mitochondria has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, a key health and longevity marker, lower free radical production, reactive oxygen species, and help optimize lifespan. So increasing this mitochondrial efficiency is especially relevant as we age because mitochondria grow larger and further apart through the normal process of aging. How do we experience this or prove this? That's a decline. It can be represented by, for example, a decline in both explosiveness and endurance. Hey, that's what makes sense to me when I'm sprinting around the track and my recent track meet and looking at that clock and I'm thinking, wow, I went all out, felt strong, was powerful down the home stretch, but the clock is wrong because 10 years ago, it was 5 seconds slower. In fact, track and field experts contend that you lose about 1 second per year in your 400-meter time as a well-trained athlete dealing with aging. It's so funny to me to, realize that sensation of what it's like to run all out pace for one lap. I've been doing it since I was a kid, or for example, run all out pace for 1 mile. And when I'm up on my toes and feeling strong and pushing the pace and pumping the arms. And when I was 25 years old, I checked my watch and it was 4:47 and now it's 6:00. I'm like, hey, what the hell's going on here? This is a decline in mitochondrial efficiency. They've also done interesting research on video gamers, and it is widely acknowledged that the top competitors, the professional gamers who are making millions of dollars competing in these tournaments and playing video at the highest level, the highest ranking on the online streaming, they peak in their late teens or early 20s. One comprehensive study of competitive gamers and gamblers revealed that 39-year-olds were 150 milliseconds slower than 24-year-old players. This represents a massive competitive advantage when you're trying to shoot somebody or whatever you're doing, race the car on the popular video games. This is also relevant to the insight that you become less insulin sensitive and more carbohydrate intolerant as you age. That's due to the mitochondria's ability to process energy and, for example, deal with an overload of carbohydrates from the hot fudge sundae. So if you go down to the ice cream shop with a teenager and you both inhale a hot fudge sundae, the teenager is going to be fine and you're going to be feeling like collapsing on the couch. Dr. Doug Wallace of the Center for Mitochondrial and Epigenomic Medicine in Philadelphia asserts that our heteroplasmy, that's the number of mitochondrial mutations in a cell, our heteroplasmy degrades by about 1% per year. This is one of the fundamental essences of age-related decline. So going back to that discussion of how cold exposure causes the mitochondria to heat up within the cells. If cold therapy can reverse this age-related distancing of mitochondria by 1 angstrom, that's like reverting your cognitive processing, athletic abilities, and fat-burning efficiency back to how they were 10 years ago. Dr. Wallace also presents extensive research linking mitochondria and the many diseases and chronic health conditions they're associated with, and how this can be improved. So if you can do anything to boost mitochondrial function, you are going to have a profound anti-aging effect. We'll talk now about Einstein's theory of relativity and the profound assertion that getting your cytochromes closer together can literally delay the process of aging. A general description of Einstein's theory is that he said, as objects speed up, Time slows down for them relative to other objects. I'm trying to give you an easy way to understand all this stuff. So hopefully you remember the movie Interstellar with Matt Damon, and remember how the astronauts were visiting other planets and traveling through black holes and time warps and space, as they call them. And remember how the spacecraft had a problem. They needed to do a repair on a planet that had a different time association from Earth. And they were delayed 1 hour fixing the spacecraft, and they were really stressed about it because a 1 hour delay on a distant planet represented a loss of 7 years' time on Earth. And the movie carries on to where they come back, and the astronauts see their little child is now a teenager just because the damn spacecraft broke down on the other planet. So that was fun to watch in a Hollywood movie, but everyone's favorite astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, confirms that while the movie presented an extreme example of time dilation when in proximity to a black hole, this stuff is the real deal. Research from Cambridge University, bringing it back from outer space to real life, research from Cambridge University suggests that as we age, we lose cognitive processing speed, obviously, for an assortment of reasons, including the degradation of the electron transport chain that I talked about, that the mitochondria are responsible for. And so, losing that cognitive processing speed causes time to seem to pass faster and our days seem to go shorter. Quote, clock time is not the same as time perceived by the human mind. We're going to put this all together for an anti-aging epiphany that will have you ordering a cold plunge from my special discount code, saving you $150 off in no time. That's at thecoldplunge.com. The discount code is B.rad Podcasts, and you'll love these wonderful units. How about that for a smooth commercial in between this highly scientific discussion? Hopefully you're following along, but maybe we can relate on a practical level that days seem to pass faster for the elderly. The day goes by shorter. Again, back to the example of my father. We'd bring him out from his resting times for lunch and get him to walk down the hall and have a bite to eat, and then shuffle back to the room for reading or rest. And then we'd go and get him for dinner time, and he'd say, "It's already dinner time? Didn't we just have lunch?" And of course, 5 hours had passed. But for him, time seems to pass faster and the days seem to go by more quickly. So here's the thing. Those electrons vibrating inside your body are actually you in the quantum physical sense. The tiny subatomic particles, which are comprised of the thousands of mitochondria in almost every cell of your body, represent the building blocks of your body. Dr. Deepak Chopra, my favorite book, I believe his first book, The Incredible Ageless Body, Timeless Mind, explain quantum physics in a really practical way that will be memorable even for me decades later after I read it. But he says things like, we are not physical beings separate from the world around us. And we are assumed erroneously to be tracking on this linear path of aging and eventual death. What we perceive to be our physical body is actually what Deepak describes as a swirling mass of atoms. So when I went to Deepak's wonderful live presentation many years ago in Sacramento, California, he instructed us to introduce ourselves next to the person next to us, someone we didn't know, and you were instructed to introduce yourself. In my case, hello, I am the swirling mass of atoms known as B.rad, and that is more literally scientifically accurate than seeing yourself as an independent being from, as Deepak describes intently, from the desk or the tree or the vehicle that we're traveling in. It's all just a swirling mass of atoms. And so these atoms are constantly renewing based on signals from our environment. And Deepak goes into detail about how the body works. He also did this on Oprah, on his wonderful appearance there decades ago. But from a literal atomic perspective, we actually manufacture a new stomach lining every week, and we make an entirely new liver on a molecular atomic level every 6 weeks. Continuing, Deepak's quote, within just a few months, most of the calcium and phosphorus crystals that make up your skeleton have come and gone. Every year, 98% of all the atoms in the human body have been exchanged. Why did I throw this section about Deepak's insights about quantum physics into this story? It's because if you can manipulate and improve your mitochondrial functions by moving uh, the the um, uh, the cytochromes closer together, you can influence the aging process just like the astronauts on the other planet. You can delay, and of course, we know all kinds of ways to screw up healthy mitochondrial function and literally speed up the aging process by making a crappy new liver every 6 weeks, right? We're still going to turn over the atoms, but if we have lifelong adverse health consequences, adverse health practices, like smoking, like drinking alcohol, like poisoning the liver in so many ways that we do, then we are going to degrade over time. So here's Dude Spellings summarizing my spewing insights from Deepak Chopra, from Jack Kruse, and so forth. Quote from Dude: the cold water forces your mitochondria to make heat, and that heat shrinks the fluid inside your cell, right? We already learned water heats up and it shrinks. Water cools down, it expands, and the plastic water bottle's broken. Back to Dude's quote. This causes the cytochromes to get closer together, as I've said a few times. This allows them to process energy more quickly and efficiently. Electrons can travel faster by an order of magnitude. Remember, when we move 1 angstrom closer together, we get a big improvement in energy production. Per the theory of relativity, when they move more quickly, time is perceived as passing more slowly. These these particles make up your body. So when they experience time more slowly, so do you. You literally slow your rate of aging. And if you're a little lost there, I'm going to give you a funny practical example. And I've checked this with scientific references to make sure it relates. Here's one. Let's say that tomorrow we chose you to go back to first grade, and you're going to go through an entire day in the first grade classroom. Guess what? That day is going to be perceived by you. The theory of relativity, time is relative to the perception of the observer. That day is going to drag on like no one's business because you're going to be bored off your ass because of your quick, adult, intelligent cognitive processing speed. You're going to get extremely bored going at the pace they go. However, when you were in first grade, the day goes by quickly because you're being, presented with new information and working hard, and you have a nice, fast, youthful cognitive processing speed. And so, you know, compare and contrast to you going back to first grade and getting bored versus my father at 97 thinking that he just had lunch when in fact it was 5 hours before due to the slower cognitive processing speed. So when you engage in a regular disciplined practice of cold therapy and improve that mitochondrial function accordingly, and there's so much research supporting this. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has a PDF download at her website with pages and pages of scientific reference validating how therapeutic cold exposure improves mitochondrial function. You come away with this amazing insight that you actually can literally delay aging through cold exposure and all other things that enhance energy production and mitochondrial function, such as your fitness pursuits. And of course, it might be easier to relate how keeping fit and insisting on still doing races around the running track, even years after you did so at a faster pace back in your youth. At least you're fighting that battle and delaying aging accordingly, because the lap around the track still seems really fast to me. The perception is the same as it was when I was racing 400 meters in high school. It's just the clock is different, and that's the impact of aging. But I'm still remaining youthful by doing so. Does that make sense at the end? Yeah, go check out the online course. It's really great. I talk about how to engage in cold therapy through the various modalities, starting with the cold shower, getting a dedicated cold tub, and also doing cold exposure in the best place of all, which is a beautiful outdoor environment. And by the way, when your body is immersed in water, you are the most protected from electromagnetic fields, and you are functioning your hormonal, metabolic, immune function is all optimized in the water accordingly. Thanks for listening, watching. Any questions? Probably will have some. Any comments? You know how to contact us, podcast@bradventures.com. Thank you.